Hello folks, it's been a while, but I'm back with another budget commander deck, and this time I decided to play with Xenagos, God of Revels. So far, I would say Xenagos is the most enjoyable deck I've created on a budget. He just crushes, and he does it in a really fun way. Really appeals to the Timmy and me. What he does, essentially, is he takes big creatures, doubles their size, and gives them haste, so they immediately go and crush your opponents and smash them for a bajillion. So it's a lot of fun. And one of the best things is the fact that he's a god, he's indestructible. You don't really have to cast him too often in each game. He has a really high survivability chance because the only way to really deal with him are tucks and exile effects. And I guess there are some sacrifice abilities that can nab him, but not many. So yeah, Xenagos is awesome, and he just sticks on the board doing awesome things. The main reason why I picked Xenagos in the first place, though, is when Commander 2014 came out, a lot of people, myself included, loved the red deck that came out, and everybody's talking about the mono red artifact archetype, and which I love it. And I did a slow bad budget deck like 2 years ago at this point, showing off like the basics of it. But like, there's a lot of resources out there for that, so I'm not going to be going over that right now. But some of the cards that aren't really getting that much attention, which are pretty awesome, is, for example, the Lieutenant Cycle, especially the green one, Thunderfoot Baloth. The Lieutenant Cycle, not very good for most decks, but when you pair it with Xenagos, who is on the board almost always, you basically always have the Lieutenant activated. So Thunderfoot Baloth in this deck is essentially 7/7 Trampler that gives all your other creatures +2/+2 and trample for only 6 mana. So he's probably maybe the best card in this deck. Well, the best creature for sure in this deck. And one of the best cards, and just really fun and enjoyable, and he's just a new addition. I'm also playing the red version of the Lieutenant Cycle, which is also insanely good. 7/7 flying, haste, and it blows up a creature each time it attacks, so that's great. So basically, the idea of the deck is play a big creature, double its power, give it haste, swing for a bajillion. In a straightforward way, you're just playing creatures and smashing, but the way it works out is you'll have like an empty board, a lot of mana out, and just Xenagos, and then you'll just win out of nowhere. You'll just play a creature, and with the deck shenanigans, you just win out of nowhere. You just deal a ridiculous amount of damage to multiple players, and you just win. So a lot of people don't see it coming too. It's kind of funny, just like without having much of a board sort. And if you do have multiple creatures out, then you basically have won as soon as you get to attack, because the amount of damage that Xenagos can dish out is just ridiculous. So, quick deck tech. The goal of the deck, since there's so many high drops in this deck, I have to run a lot of mana ramp to consistently get to like the 6 and 7 mana to start dropping the big bombs. So there's a lot of mana ramp here. Nothing out of the ordinary, just your typical good green cards for ramping. The card draw is actually kind of unique for this type of deck, at least. You essentially want to be running these type of cards, Soul's Majesty, which you don't really see elsewhere, but if you play really big creatures, then obviously playing something like Soul's Majesty for drawing equal to their power is really powerful. So let's say you're playing Soul of the Harvest and you have Xenagos out. Suddenly Soul of the Harvest comes out, becomes a 12/12 thanks to Xenagos' ability, and then you follow it up with, for example, Life's Legacy. You draw 12 cards, gain 12 life for 2 mana, which is ridiculous, and it really fills up your hand very quickly. So there's a lot of those type of cards, Life's Legacy, Hunter's Insight, Momentous Fall, Greater Good being the best of the best, Soul's Majesty. That you cast it once and basically you're good for the rest of the game. There's also some library, top of your library manipulation, Cream of the Crop and Crystal Ball. And you can also count Sylvan Library for it because that's what it's really there for. And they work very well to just make sure that you're avoiding lands after you ramp hard, or you just draw the cards that you need, or you dig for answers or whatever. But they work especially well with a couple other cards that cheat creatures into play, such as Guild Feud, which can cheat a creature in the top 3 cards of your library into play, and Lurking Predators, which cheats the top card of your library into play. So obviously, playing Cream of the Crop, making sure a creature is on the top of your library is actually very beneficial for this deck. Then we have a lot of cheat effects. Even with all this ramp, all the big creatures are like 6-7 mana, so you only get to really cast one of them per turn always. So cheat effects are actually very powerful to get you more creatures into play than your standard 1 per turn. So I'm running basically the typical ones: Elvish Piper, Quicksilver Amulet. I talked about these two. Myojin of Life's Web, also pretty good because I usually have a hand with a couple other creatures into play, so Myojin, even at 9 mana, will usually cheat in like 1 or 2. Artisan of Kozilek cheats in from the graveyard. Tooth and Nail, obviously good. Molograph Monstrosity, also amazing, especially with that sweet, sweet trample. Spine Rock Null and Mossword Bridge are probably the 2 best for this deck, just because they cost a land slot. Coming into tapped is not a huge deal for this deck, especially when it's only 2 colors, so you can afford some tap lands. And activating their ability is trivial in Xenagos because, like I said, he doubles the creature's power. So you have a 5/5 creature, and that's like the smallest fatty that I run. It becomes immediately a 10/10, and then boom, Mossword Bridge lets you cheat in a creature for free. Spine Rock Null, again, dealing 7 damage a turn is really simple, so really easy cheat effects. And then another really cool thing about Xenagos is his triggered ability triggers every combat. So if you actually manage to have more than 1 combat each turn, you double the effectiveness of Xenagos' trigger. So cards like Savage Beating, World at War, all these extra combat steps are very powerful with Xenagos because you take a you take like a 6/6 Gruul Rage, you turn him into 12/12, then you use Seize the Day to attack with him again. Now he's a 24/24, and then you flashback Seize the Day or something like that. He's a 48/48, and you probably killed 2 opponents at that point. So yeah, the extra combat steps are really, really good. The best ones probably are Scourge of the Throne and Seize the Day, just because they're so cheap at what they do. Also World at War. Hellkite Charger, I've never actually had a chance to actually activate his ability, but it's still good. And then we got a lot of removal, just every single type of removal, lots of creature removal. The Steel Hellkite is just like catch-all removal. Mostly just attached on fatties to blow up the board. But I do run Impact Resonance, which is insanely good here. Another new card from the Commander 2014 set. Since I'm swinging for at least 10 damage each turn with a fatty and Xenagos into play, Impact Resonance is essentially like a 2-mana fireball for 10 or more. It can wipe out an entire person's board or just snipe multiple creatures for only 2 mana, so it does a lot of work in this deck. So that's the removal. Then I just have like really, really efficient kill creatures, essentially. They're just so good at killing your opponent that you just gotta run them. Molten Primordial, just steal a creature per person and swing for Bajillion. Malignus is going to be basically equal to the highest life total amongst your opponents because half of it, and then Xenagos doubles his size, so you can easily one-shot people with Malignus. You can easily one-shot the entire board with Hydra Omnivore, which is probably the most fun I've had playing on MTGO in a long, long time. If one person is open for a swing, you play Hydra Omnivore with Xenagos out, becomes a 16/16 instantly, and you're doing 16 damage to all your opponents. If you add to that, like, Seize the Day, the 16/16 untaps, has another combat step, is now a 32/32, and that's for sure going to kill your opponents. So a lot of silliness happens with Hydra Omnivore. I've won many games just having nothing on the board and then having Xenagos out and then playing Hydra Omnivore and just killing everybody. The surprise. Yeah, and then there's these two guys. Giving all your creatures hexproof is really good. Giving all your creatures indestructibility is really good. And I think like the main thing about this deck is, if your opponents don't wipe your board every single turn, and you have if you have two creatures out in play and you untap, you've essentially won. I've never actually got to that point really. Usually somebody destroys my board every single turn, and then I'll play a new creature out with Xenagos still on the board because he's indestructible and he's awesome like that. Then I'll play a new creature out, and that creature will immediately get haste, swing for bajillion damage, and then still be a huge threat, and then my opponents have to wipe them again. So you do a lot of pressure with just very few cards. It's pretty amazing to see. Then we have like the final few cards, which are just awesome in this deck. Strionic Resonator just doubles the trigger of Xenagos abilities, but there's also a lot of triggered abilities in this deck, so even if you weren't using Xenagos, the Resonator is really good. Berserk doubles the doubling of damage and gives trample, so that's awesome. Genesis Wave is always really good, especially when you have lots of ramp. And then Triumph of the Hordes gives all your dudes trample and infect, which it usually ends up killing one opponent, but it can kill multiple opponents if you do have more than one creature out on the field at that time. So, yeah, lots of ways to just win out of nowhere with this deck. The lands also provide a little bit more removal of contested cliffs. You get Reliquary Tower, which is really kind of important in this deck. When you draw like 16 cards off Greater Good or something like that to hold on to them, it's pretty nice. Rage Pits gives you Trample, which is, again, it's kind of what the deck really wants, because you already got Haste and you got big creatures, you want to give them Trample. Keswick Wolf Friend does the same thing. And yeah, Strip Mine, pretty easy mana base, pretty straightforward. And yeah, pretty fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech, and I'll see you guys next time.